Hello, everybody. This is a coaching room event around the subject of developing emotionally intelligent relationships. I am joined today by the one, the only, James Hayes. Hello, James. You're going to be taking us through. Hey, looking good in blue. And
good.
We're going to
like it.
I like it. It's a cheerful color. And it generates trust. Blue, generally. Those in the little blue psychology, particularly online. Okay, so... but it also brightens the whole room. What we're going to do is quickly cover what intelligent relationships are, and then we're going to cover 4 main points. And I'm going to tell you what the points are before we get there. We're going to talk about pacing, we're going to talk about rapport, we're going to talk about looking at and looking as, and we're going to talk about self-leadership. But James is in charge. I'm just guiding the process. So James, what's it look like to have an emotionally intelligent relationship, and why are they important?
Okay. So... I guess this subject is really about having the skills to be in emotionally intelligent relationships. So those 4 things that you mentioned, those would be the skills of how to get it, but what is it, right? And so emotionally intelligent relationships, I put it down to 2 things. The hallmark of emotionally intelligent relationships are rapport and communication, leading via communication. In other words, if you've got an emotionally intelligent relationship with someone, they feel good about talking to you. Yeah, they like it, they feel good, they feel safe about talking to you because you've got that rapport. And then when you communicate, what you say matters. So you communicate with influence. If that's true for you, then that's true for them, then you've got an emotionally intelligent relationship. One that's working with what you think, what you feel, what they think, what they feel, and it's harmonizing so that 2 people enjoy talking to each other. There's a rapport-filled experience, and what you say, what they say matters. Yeah, it makes a difference.
Okay.
When you have this, when you've got this, well, collaboration is possible. Win-win is possible. You get more done with less effort, and you get to enjoy the experience. And so this is a topic that is true for personal relationships, but this is also true in the corporate space. You could change the word emotionally intelligent relationships. You could change that to emotionally intelligent leadership. But are you the kind of leader, the way that you conduct yourself, are you the kind of leader that people want to follow? Yeah, they've got that rapport with you, that trust with you, and they don't just listen to what you say because they have to. They listen to what you say because they want to. What tends to happen, and this is kind of true in the corporate space, it's true also in the personal space, is that relationships and relating is kind of hit and miss. A sign of not having the emotionally intelligent relating skills, an indicator of that would be you kind of get along well with some people, you don't really get along well with other people. If people are kind of like you, then yeah, you get along well with them, you enjoy talking to them. But when you meet people who aren't like you, don't communicate or think the same way that you do, now there's kind of a barrier, you don't really know what to do with that. And maybe when you communicate, some people listen if they're invested, if they really like you, they'll listen. Other times people don't. It's kind of that hit and miss. If you know what to do about it, then chances are you've got some of those emotionally intelligent relating skills. If you've got no idea, then this subject is going to be prime for you because we're going to cover the basics of it.
Okay, fantastic. So let's start with the basics. The first one we've got on this is pacing.
So let's look at the first component then. People feeling good about relating with you. So that's rapport. When you've got rapport, the conversation feels easy. There's a sense of safety, there's a sense of trust here. It's okay for me to communicate, or it's okay for you to communicate with me. We've got rapport. Now, how we get rapport is through pacing. Pacing is an emotionally intelligent relating skill. And there's a couple of different dimensions to it. Those 2 to 3 things you mentioned in the beginning of the call, different forms of pacing. But kind of globally, pacing is the skill of being able to step into another person's space and be there with them. Get a feel for what it's like to be there with them, be able to put yourself in their shoes, understand what they're thinking, understand what they're feeling, and work with that material. That's kind of the global definition of pacing, and there's different kind of sub skills we can get into. But how's that land so far?
Okay, except Jack's chasing a cat up the stairs, so I muted myself. Jack the Black Lab. It's cool. Okay, let's look at getting into the same space as him, the same psychological space. Let's go a little bit deeper. Can you give an example of when you've done this and how people have received that?
Yeah. Well, this talks to the first sub-skill, which probably everyone can do and has done on some level in different occasions. So one great example of pacing is simply seeking to understand. You've got a point of view, I've got a point of view. I could just talk to you about my point of view, or I could seek to understand your point of view first. So seeking to understand would be asking you, what do you think? How do you feel about this? What's your point of view on this situation? Let me see if I understand you. Here's what you think. Here's what's important to you. Here's why we're having this conversation from your point of view in the first place. What you really want to achieve from this is X, Y, Z. Have I understood that right? Is that what you really care about? So what I've done here is I've stepped into your shoes. Let me see if I understand your position. When this happens, what does this tend to encourage in the receiving party?
Openness or a felt experience of being heard, potentially? Depends on how it's done, doesn't it?
So openness is a common experience. Openness, demonstrates, it's a demonstration of care. I actually care enough about you to understand, to listen, to see things from your point of view, rather than just talk at you about my point of view. Now I'm talking with you. You're included. And so this is starting to create rapport as the receiver on the other end gets to experience, I matter. I matter to this person. They're taking an interest. They're seeking to understand. And now that I'm receiving this, what tends to happen is reciprocity. Okay, I feel heard now. You get me. What about you? What do you think about this? And now we're talking with rather than talking at each other. So this is one of the very fun. I would normally start with this first as an example of pacing. And this is true personally, professionally, regardless of my position. Let's just say this is the corporate space and you report to me. I'm your boss. Well, I could talk at you and tell you what I need and tell you what I expect and tell you what tasks I've got in store for you. But if I take the time to have a conversation with you, maybe it's the first conversation that we have. Maybe the conversation I have with you is what's important to you about being on this team? What do you really care about here in this company? What is your outcome? Why'd you join us? What if this was leading to something for you? What would that be leading to? I really want to understand. Because the more successful you are in this role, the more successful we're going to be. So I want to help you become successful here. Tell me what you care about. Well, not only am I now demonstrating care, not only am I demonstrating that you matter, so now already you're experiencing the effects of this rapport being built, but also the more I understand the other person, the more anyone understands the other person, the more capacity you have to influence, to work with that person. Because now if I know what's really important to you, then when I communicate to you about what the job, what's required in this job, I can tailor my message to you in a way that resonates with you. I can tie it in with what you really want. You really want to be a person of significance in this business? Great, I want you to as well. Here is what needs to be done to make that happen. Here's the 10 things, 10 items. So now we've got rapport. I'm demonstrating that you matter, and I'm working with something that's actually matters to you. Yeah, I'm working with your psychology. I'm working with the things that you care about, which is now maximizing the influence, not because I'm influencing the other person, but because they're being influenced by what they care about. And I'm just able to bring that into the picture because I know about it, because you've shared it. So now we get to synergize rather than it's like rather than being a one-sided relationship, now the relationship is two ways. And that's really an indicator of an emotionally intelligent relationship. Is it two ways? Do I get you? Do you get me? Can I work with your psychology? Can you work with mine?
So let's dive out then. Because this is great if somebody's workable with. Right? So how do you know if somebody's workable with in this way, and what do you do if they're not?
Yeah. So what would be an example? What would be an example of someone who's not workable?
Somebody who's aggressive when you attempt to connect with them and pace their reality, ask them questions, and they're purely flat out aggressive towards you.
Okay. So even when a person's angry, there's things we can do to pace them. Now, one caveat. Let me just make one caveat on this point. At the end of the day, you can have the most amazing rapport building skills. You can have the most amazing pacing skills. You can know all the things to do and all the things to say. But at the end of the day, you remember, hallmark of relationship is it's two ways. At the end of the day, you can only ever optimize your part of that two-way street. So there's gonna be, I don't want to juice anyone into thinking that, hey, with these skills you just will connect with every single person. Well, the other person's going to want to come to the table. There's always going to be that one person who, for whatever reason, at this point in time, is just not ready or not willing or whatever. And so when we talk a little bit about self-leadership and what to focus on, what to be responsible for, that will become more clear, the kind of mentality to bring to that situation. But don't have the view that you need to connect with everyone anywhere, because again, it's a two-way street. There's always going to be that one person who doesn't want to come to the table. That said, if someone's aggressive or mismatchy, they kind of have a style that doesn't really resonate with you or what you're used to, you can still pace a different way. This gets into now, let's just say, the second sub-skill of pacing, which is matching and mirroring. So if someone's aggressive, there's going to be a certain body language, there's going to be a certain kind of vocal quality, volume even, there's going to be different things going on. And these are things that we can pace by matching. Now, matching is a subtle subtle form of getting into the other person's world by taking on their mannerisms, taking on their body language, taking on the way that they communicate. If you watch groups of people like long-term friends or partners, you may notice, this may be true in your own life if you're listening to this, you may notice that groups of people who know each other real well tend to adopt the same mannerisms. They kind of talk in the same way or walk in the same way, or they're all standing around like leaning over, arms crossed or something. Because when we're in rapport with people, this is something that happens naturally. We tend to match and mirror the people that we're relating with. So this is something that happens. This is something that we can do deliberately. So we can, regardless of whether someone's upset or angry or whatever emotional state they're in, we can still pace components of them. If they're talking fast, we can talk fast. If they have a certain body language, we can emulate that body language. If they're loud, we can increase our volume. One of the distinctions of rapport is when we've done some pacing and we start to get rapport, we can then lead. So if someone's really shy and they're talking quietly and we're emulating that, if we start to change and increase our volume because we've been pacing sufficiently, what will happen is they'll follow. And vice versa, if someone's being really loud and gregarious and like that, we can speak louder and have the same kind of energy as them, And then when we've paced sufficiently, we can start to bring that down and talk at a more even tone. And if we've got that rapport, they'll follow. The pacing is really it's not state dependent. To a degree. It's not state dependent. Does that make sense?
Yes, it is. Well, yes, it does. But let's talk about this then. So state dependent, if you go into it, because this is another element, and maybe this is in the self-leadership bit, is if you go into this conversation and you are not in, let's call it a positive emotional state or an open, spacious place of being, then it's going to be more challenging. So do you want to speak to that? Is that in, do we want to jump to that? No, because we've still got looking at and looking as.
Yeah, let's park that for the last piece, which is self-leadership, because that question is really answered by that content. I think we may be close to it anyway. So we've covered looking at, looking as. Looking at is what most people are doing already. Looking at is, so there you are, I'm looking at you, this is what you're like, and here's what I need from you. Yeah, so that's the kind of looking at it from a one-way street point of view. Looking at and looking as is the capacity to now step into the other person's shoes. That's the looking at. I'm looking as them. Here's what I need, what do they need? Here's what I want out of this situation, what do they want? Here's what I'm thinking and feeling, what are they thinking and feeling?
Yeah.
So looking as it fits into pacing, and that's one of the first forms of pacing.
Yeah.
The second being matching and mirroring. So we can match and mirror body language, we can match and mirror vocal qualities. We can match and mirror keywords. Yeah, notice not everyone likes to communicate in the same way. Some people like to communicate detail. You ask them how their day was, and they tell you at 7 a.m. they woke up, and at 7:01 they wore these kinds of clothes, and then the sun was kind of shining, but it was a little bit overcast, and then 45 minutes later, they're up to lunchtime, and they haven't finished answering the question yet because they're really detailed. Well, a very clever form of pacing is communicating the way that the person likes to receive information. So if they're really detailed, we get into the details with them. If they're really global, big picture, then we just give it to them in a nutshell. Notice the more I understand you and the more I pace you and generate this rapport, the more influence I'm going to have with you because we're aligned. We're alike, and I can work with what you're presenting. I can work with what you think, I can work with what you're saying, I can even work with how you're standing and carrying yourself. The more aligned we are, the more rapport we have. The more rapport we have, when I lead, when I give you my point of view, or I give you my instruction, my task, when I go to lead you in sales, I make my pitch. The more rapport we have, the more I've paced you, the more open and ready and willing you'll be to hear and listen to what I have to say. So this is where leadership comes in, because now we have relating, pacing. Pacing, if we look, a metaphor for pacing is you're kind of following. You're following them into their world. So you can do that physically, vocally, and metaphorically, like psychologically. Well, if I can follow you and you experience being followed, you're ready to follow me. Now we're leading. So it's like the breathing in and breathing out of emotionally intelligent relationships. Emotionally unintelligent relationships are ones where I haven't done any following, I just want to lead. Here's what I care about. Hurry up and finish what you want to say. So that, because I'm not really listening, I'm just waiting to tell you what I want to tell you, which is more interesting and relevant to me.
Good. Okay. Next steps for people.
Good. So I'll tell you what, before we do next steps, maybe we should talk about self-leadership. We've been talking a lot about what to do with the other person. We've been talking about, pacing and the skills to use and stepping into their shoes. And you brought up a good point. What do you do when someone, is just not willing to come to the table? Or what do you do maybe when you're not in a good space to come to the table because of whatever state that you're in. Maybe you're angry or frustrated or something. So let's talk about self-leadership, and we've talked about this in other talks before. We've touched on it. Self-leadership is this is the paradox, right? The most influence you have with other people will occur when you're focused primarily on what you control, which is yourself, leading yourself. So you've got 4 powers, power of thinking, the power of feeling, the power of what you say, the power of what you do. Those are the things you control in a two-way street, or in any street really. Those are the things you control. So at any point in time, if you're going to have an emotionally intelligent relationship, it requires you to lead you. It requires you to take responsibility and ownership of those 4 things and nothing else. So that means walking into any situation with a question in the back of your mind, any relationship with the question in the back of your mind, what is the most empowering thinking from me here? What's the most empowering feeling? What is the most empowering thing for me to say? What is the most empowering thing for me to do? Focusing only on what I control. Of not self-leading is I'm walking into a situation, I'm walking into a relationship, and all my focus is on what I don't control. All my focus is on what you think and what you feel and what I want you to think and what I want you to feel, or what I want you to say and what I want you to do. I want you to like me, or I want you to agree with me, or I want you to calm down and don't be offended by what I've just told you, or I want you to feel good about the task that I've given you and not feel bad about it. Well, all of those are like very common, very kind of conventional examples of the shoe being on the wrong foot. Yeah, all those are examples of me sending my focus to things I don't control. Those are things that you control. Well, those are things that the other party controls. And if my attention is what I don't control, guess where my attention is not? Well, my attention's not with what I control. And so what happens is, now that I'm thinking about all these things I don't control, now I'm thinking about what you think and what you feel, and I'm paying over attention to them, I'm becoming overly responsible for them, I'm not taking responsibility for me. So if someone is in a situation where they're not willing to come to the table, that is their responsibility. Personal power is understanding that the only person you can bring to the table is you. Are you bringing the right thinking? Are you in the right state? Are you bringing the right state for this relationship or for this leadership situation? Are you saying what would be healthy for you to say in this situation? Are you walking your talk? Are you behaving in a way that is leading the kind of experience you want to receive here? The beauty of self-leadership is the more you focus on those things, then the more influence you're going to have, because you're going to be using your thoughts, your feelings, you're going to be using your powers in a way that is empowering. And from that, you won't have 100% control, because the only thing you control is you, but you will have maximum influence because you're using what you do control responsibly.
Good. Let's just run through those 4 things, the 4 powers again that you said.
So what you think, you've got power over what you think. I can't control what you think, can I? Based on what you think, you have a big impact. You control what you feel. Yeah, you think anxious thoughts, you're going to feel anxious feelings. Think solutions focus, you're going to feel motivational feelings. Well, you control what you say, obviously, because it's you saying it, and you control what you do. So if you walk into any situation, any relationship, we have the context of relationships, but this is true outside of relationships. This is true in any situation. If you're only focused on the things you control, you're at maximum personal power and therefore empowered, because those are the only things you do control. And so that's sending all your attention and focus to what is within your power to control. And the rest is influence.
Okay. So next steps then, going back to the next step, what should people do if they want to know more, at what levels? Let's start with from an organizational point of view. So what can the coaching room offer at an organizational point of view, and then for the individuals? Around emotional intelligence and NLP.
So this is a subject that comes up quite a bit in the team work that we do with corporates and the Unleashing Leadership programs that we do with corporates, where we get a bunch of different people, in a team. We've got management, we've got the executors, we've got different people in different teams not coming together, not aligning. And when you don't have alignment, you get silo mentality. This is my department, that's your department, we're not responsible for that. Now we get this kind of silo division, not solo, silo division. And it makes everything much harder to get done. It makes everything kind of non-collaborative, makes everything kind of like a battle to get things done. So Unleashing Leaders is a program that we put together for corporates where that's one of the big things we address: alignment. Getting alignment with the team so that the team is focused on our team, not my team or that team, but our team. Well, there's an emotionally intelligent team now because we're unified, we're aligned. What we say matters to each other. We communicate with each other with influence, and we enjoy working together. So that would be the program to check out for this. And then in the personal space, the EQ Day. Yeah, we run one-day EQ days once every couple of months. That will be one of the best places to get a taste of emotionally intelligent relationships live. We also have an article that we put together a little while ago, 15 tips towards better personal relationships. And 15 tips towards better professional relationships. Absolutely spot on content for what we've been talking about.
Perfect. Thank you very much, James Hayes. That was Developing Emotionally Intelligent Relationships. Check out the link descriptions below, and you'll have access to the corporate brochure as well as the EQ days coming up. Thank you, James. Always good to see you in blue. Take care. See you all.